Good evening and welcome to the season finale of Farming PNG, a series of documentaries that took us around 4 provinces of Papua New Guinea in search of stories around the country's agricultural sector. Along the way, we collected many stories, met with many people, and had a unique chance of uncovering some of the challenges as well as opportunities in a sector that truly rests in the heart of Papua New Guineans. To mark this event, I have in studio with me tonight a small group of guests who were instrumental in the making of this season and others who will be for the future of the agricultural sector in Papua New Guinea. That is Steve Woodhouse, the presenter of the show and a seasoned agronomist in PNG. I have Allan Bird, the governor of the East Sepik Province of Papua New Guinea, where we have filmed the last episode of Farming PNG. And finally, the European ambassador to Papua New Guinea, Mr. Ioannis Giogkarakis Argyropoulos. Together, we will be watching the 6th and final episode of Farming PNG together with yourself. But right after, we will be back here in studio to discuss some of the exciting new developments in Papua New Guinea that are likely to turn the agricultural sector on its head in the years to come. Stay tuned, and I'll see you back here right after the show.
In the previous episode of Farming PNG, we looked at the phenomenal growth of vanilla in East Sepik, as Papua New Guinea has become one of the largest producers in the world of this exotic spice. However, East Sepik is more than just vanilla, and in this episode we will find out what has been done to revamp the agriculture sector here, starting from cocoa, which was once the core of the province's economy. But a trip to East Sepik, of course, would not be complete without seeing the mighty Sepik River and a visit to a crocodile farm, where the farmers are trying to make the most of this indigenous reptile, which is part of the cultural fabric of this whole region. We're here in Himbru, Bukinara, in Yangoro area of East Sepik. And as you can see, today I've decided not to come on my own, but bring the community in. So what you see here is a community project. This started as a small-scale bush materials nursery, and they saw so many farmers were coming, not just from the local area, but from further away, and they decided that it was time to expand it. They've had a little bit of help from a cocoa project called the SMART program, but the end aim of this project is to make this sustainable. In other words, that these village people can make money from this into the future, where this is a shining example of private people getting on and doing what's important to them. This village is one of many across the province, and part of a bigger project to revamp the cocoa industry, where the local administration is introducing new nurseries and improved planting material. The distribution of genetically superior material is fundamental to any agricultural program. And as we saw with vanilla, the growers can use this to drive a successful farming business.
One of the things that is peculiar to Sepik is the seed culture. And you need to understand this in the context of the vanilla. We were able to expand vanilla so quickly because we shared seeds. Cocoa, on the other hand, we were hit with the pot borer. I mean, at one point, East Sepik was producing 24,000 tons a year. We were the largest single producer in the country. Suddenly, you got hit with pot borer and boom. So essentially, for us to get our production up, we need to replace 90 million cocoa trees. No one is going to give us 450 million kina to do it. You know, that's not going to stop us. I have a lot of faith in my farmers. And I know that if I put the nursery at their doorstep, they will take advantage of it. So we cannot afford 450 million kina to replace 90 million seedlings. But we can afford to put at least 1,000 nurseries across East and West Sepik.
1,000 nurseries across the province? Sounds like a very ambitious project. But today we will be visiting a budwood garden, where farmers collect the material for budding. These particular trees are known to be tolerant to the pod borer. And it is from here that new genetic material will be distributed to all of the nurseries. And it takes skill and local knowledge to do it all correctly. Well, I'm a little bit short of breath after climbing all these mountains, but I'm here with Warwick, Simon, and Michael. Okay, we've brought them up here, we've left the rest of them behind, because these are the guys that actually do the technical work here. They understand a little bit about the history of this project and how it started and how it got going. From here, we collect the genetic material that goes back to the nursery. This material here is part of the 18 clones that are tolerant of cocoa pod borer. This is the insect that caused a lot of damage. How many years ago, Warwick, did it come here?
2006 to 2010.
Yeah, about 2010, these people started to be impacted by this pod borer pest. That's a little insect that actually damages the crop and can cause phenomenal losses of yields in a cocoa block. So these varieties here, or clones as we call them, they can grow and they can keep growing and keep bearing even though the pod borer pest is around. But the amazing thing about this particular block is that these farmers themselves paid to get this material here.
Saya salemigo, lo medeng CCI, lo research station, Mr. Plonghap, mi working shipment, bro kakao. Mi blo starting bad but blo mi blo mi putim lo ski, then mi blo putim through aeroplane, mi blo working through aeroplane. Karim kam lo here, mi blo putim ken lo polybags lo here, and mi kam tap no mi blo working lining, na mi blo kam planning working lo here. Until mi blo rising bad but blo mi play come up now, then mi play. Go through come straight lawyer, go necessary.
It's surprising to see how much knowledge resides with the farmers nowadays. They seem to be in touch and well informed with all of the latest trends. And they have a technical knowledge that sometimes astonishes even me.
We have to transfer that knowledge from where it's currently lying idle to the people that need it the most. So we are trying to create a smart farmer, a farmer that is innovative, a farmer that knows how to make decisions that are good for him or her. But at the same time, that decision that's good for him or her, that decision is also good for the province. That decision is also good for the country. Whenever government does things, they forget the most important person in the equation. The most important person is not the government, it's not the money, it's that person in the village. That villager is a powerful production unit. You just need to understand how you tap into his or her ability.
One of the most delicate aspects of the whole process is cloning the genetic material selected from this budwood garden. And it is here where the farmer's skills and knowledge make all the difference. It takes expertise and a steady hand to do that. And that is the bit that will be stuck onto the tree that's in the nursery. Currently, PNG farmers are producing around about 200 kilos per hectare. using this sort of material and being able to fight a little bit the insect pest problems, these guys are quite easily capable of producing a ton a hectare. On current prices, equates to 8,000 kina per hectare per year. Considering the availability of land and the local knowledge of farmers here, there is no limit to what is possible. But unfortunately, the prohibitive prices of seedlings have actually hindered the process in the past.
One village farmer to grow 1 hectare of cocoa would need about 600 seedlings. Now, the price of the cocoa seedling before the East Sepik provincial government got involved was 5 kina for a seedling. So one farmer would need a minimum of 3,000 kina just to get seedlings. Someone in the village who does not have access to cocoa or to cash is not going to afford 3,000 kina to establish a farm that's going to take 2 years to reach production. That's stupid. So we need to do the thinking for them. You need to bring the cost of the establishment right down. So the very first thing the East Sepik provincial government succeeded in doing was to drop the price of the seedling from 5 kina down to 1 kina 80.
So one very important thing about this is that all of these clones are different. They have different characteristics, so they have to be kept separate in the nursery. So Simon, what's this clone?
This one called B5.
All right, so this is a B5 variety of the cocoa. So it has to go into one of these rows that has B5 on it. Okay, it's very important that these don't get mixed up because that makes it harder to trace them once they're out in the field and later on. And there may be one of these clones that's particularly suitable to this area. So it's very important we keep track of what's happening here. So let's go and bud one, Simon. Okay, so this is the tree this is the mother tree.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the reasons we do this is because if you just plant seedlings in these bags, seeds from trees around the place, they're exactly like us. They have half of the genetic material of the mother, half of the genetic material of the father. So you really don't know at the end of the day what's going to grow. So it's very important that we keep traceability here for each of the different clones so we know exactly where it's come from. We know exactly who the parent trees are. So let's show us how you bud.
Okay. Basically, it's like that. Skin long. Okay. Skin will come down. Halfway.
So that's where the patch that we got up in the garden has to fit. Is that right?
Yes. But page. That's long now.
So what he's done is he's actually cut this off a little bit with the bud. You can see the bud in between the branches, the fork of that little thing. And that has to fit onto here. You see, this guy's a bit of an expert. He's fitted it straight in.
Then we'll cut them off this
the flaps that you cut off. Yes.
Okay. Then there is some bud patch.
So to hold that bud patch on, he's using a special tape that's used for budding, and that goes all the way around what he's just put onto the tree. Initially to protect it, but also to affect the environment immediately around the bud. So it'll be hot, a little bit hotter, a little bit moister, so that that bud that's in the middle of those things can start kicking along. So this one's okay. It'll start growing now. Once it starts growing, we'll be chopping this bit off because that's part of the old tree and trying to encourage this one to grow as fast as possible to get up and be. So thank you very much, Simon. That was really well done. It's a very simple example of how to do budding. And as I said before, it isn't only applicable to cocoa. You can use this process, budding, for other fruit trees. They use it in Europe for apples and pears. They use it in citrus industry. So it's a very common practice that's used all around the world for different sorts of things.
I have 138,000 cocoa farmers registered by the Cocoa Board in my province. Over the next 3 years, I expect every single farmer to be trained, free of charge. We train them. Our target is to get one budwood nursery in every village. Basically, make it available right there at the doorstep of the farmer.
Mighty Sepik River, the longest in New Guinea, and home to some of the country's most intriguing cultures. Our journey through the country will end here for the second season of Farming PNG. And in these waters, we will finally encounter crocodiles. Animals that are literally under the skin of local people. For centuries, people here have been interacting with these animals who have a strong cultural significance, even to the point of imitating their skins as part of a young man's initiation. But we're here today to learn how local people are actually farming these prehistoric animals, whose hides are much sought after by the sophisticated markets of Europe and North America. Sustainability, though, is the key word for an industry that could really flourish considering the amount of crocodiles to be found under these waters.
Look, we've got a population of about 500,000 people in East Sepik. You add West Sepik, total goes up to about 900,000 people. So you got about 900,000 Sepiks. But I bet you, we probably got 5 million crocodiles. Into the future, I think there's got to be a large crocodile farm in East Sepik. There's got to be a way to sustain it. And there's got to be a way for us to do leather in Sepik. And you know, things like Gucci, Prada, those sorts of things can come from a sustainable farm in the Sepik that connects directly to your markets in Europe and North America and Japan, places like that, China.
Well, I must say that when I see it as a finished product, I actually like crocodile skins, especially if I know that it comes from sustainable farms. But to be entirely honest with you, I haven't been exactly fond of this animal. Its dinosaur-like appearance, the fact that you can't see it underwater, and those yellow eyes have terrified me all of my life. But in this last episode of Farming PNG, I have decided to face my fears and come face to face with this fearful reptile, right here in the waters of the Sepik River. So these are the guys who are actually out there hunting the crocodiles. And they've actually caught one. For the sake of this program, I've jumped on board with these hunters. And as you can see, they've stuck a spear through the tail just to catch it. And as soon as they caught it, they've put a band round its mouth so it can't bite. Crocodiles can bite very strong that way, but they can't open their mouths. So I'd better get over my phobia and actually hold the thing. I know what you're thinking about. That was not a big crocodile. Okay, it's true. It's just a juvenile. But that's what the farmers want. Because in the wild, the skin can get damaged. But in the farm, they remain unblemished and hence increase the sale value. I can assure you though, that same animal can grow several meters long. and I would not feel so confident to handle it as I'm doing now. I'll give it to you, give him a home. We can get his rubber band taken off his nose. Although Paulie and the rest of the farmers here seem to have almost a personal relationship with the crocodiles, seeing them in the wild raises the issue of sustainability. PNG is actually internationally recognized as one of the few countries allowed to export crocodile skins because of the large number that are available. But the industry remains unregulated in East Sepik, and it's hard to estimate the population of crocodiles available and how many can be caught on an annual basis.
When a clutch of crocodile eggs hatch, there might be 100 hatchlings. Only 10 survive into adulthood in the wild. The rest become food for other animals. Now, Sepiks know how to handle crocodiles. So when I talk about a farm, a large-scale farm, it would be based on collection of juveniles. So it's not really about hunting. Hunting is unsustainable. We have to move from hunting to farming. And if you look at everything we are doing in vanilla, in cocoa, what we want to do in rice, it's all about graduating this current hunter from where they are currently living, graduating them up to become farmers. So you are consistently improving the understanding of your people in terms of how they use their own resources.
Okay, Paulie, it looks like a swimming pool here. Why is it all tiled and elevated, lifted up?
It is because we want to produce quality skins. That's why we tile them up.
Okay, so what Paulie's saying is that they used to raise these down below on the ground, but raising them on the ground has a bit of an effect on the skin quality. So the tiles being nice and smooth, the crocodiles grow here and they don't have any blemishes on the skin, which is the valuable part of the crocodile. Paulie and his guys here, they keep the crocodiles for up to 3 years, during which time they feed them, because they have to be a certain minimum size before the skins have any value at all. So these crocodiles probably eat about 3 times a week, and these farmers that look after the crocodiles, they're basically having to buy fish from village people around on the rivers. They bring the fish and sell it to the farm, and the farm feeds the fish to the crocodiles.
Yep.
So how long can they stay under the water?
Normally they stay under the water for 25 to 30 minutes.
And then they have to come back up?
Come back.
Yeah, okay.
To breathe and go back.
So one thing I have learned while we've been talking about this whole project is that crocodiles can bite while they're on land, but they can't bite you if they're in the water. But this little fella over here is just looking for trouble, which is why I brought the stick in with me in the first place. Sadly enough, this brings us to the end of our time in East Sepik, and also to the end of the second season of Farming PNG. Together, we've been to some amazing places. And more importantly, we've met with people who are committed to a better and brighter future for the agriculture sector through sheer hard work and determination. A lot of big words, but in my experience, there should be less talking and a lot more action on the ground to make things happen. You reap what you sow, they say, and this could not be more accurate than when talking about the agriculture sector. Even though we've completed our journey here for this season, I still feel that we have only scratched the surface. And you should not be surprised to see us back soon with a whole set of new stories, new places to discover, and new people to meet in this amazing country that is Papua New Guinea.
Welcome back. This marks the end of Farming PNG Season 2, sadly, and we have learned plenty of things along the way. First of all, that Steve Woodhouse has a tremendous fears for crocodile, but he has faced it on camera and is now very confident of holding crocodiles in his hands. But we also have learned that the agricultural sector is a very, very deep into the skin of the people in this country, and you don't need to teach anything to Papua New Guineans when it comes to agriculture. You actually have to encourage them to produce more and to do better into the future. Now, we have 4 of you here in studio, and I know that all of you have strong opinions about the agricultural sector, and there is plenty to talk about. Steve, we said many times while we were filming this show that the agricultural sector, like any other sector in this country around the world, is changing rapidly. It's not anymore enough just to plant tomatoes and potatoes. There is a lot of science, there is a lot of technologies, there is a lot of research and development. So in a nutshell, today, what can we say where the agricultural sector is going into the future?
Yeah, okay. Well, Marco, as you know, I've been here about 40 years. When I first came to Papua New Guinea, a third of the country's GDP came from agriculture. It is now considerably less than that. But as you say, farming is definitely part of the entire culture here, from the highlands all the way down to the coastal regions. PNG does very, very well in terms of export cash crops. Cocoa, I think we are now about 1% of the world market. Oil palm, slightly more. Coffee, 1-2% of the world market. But the face of agriculture is, as you said, changing incredibly rapidly.
Now, you say when I came to PNG, when was that? For the
in 1979. Right. So, I mean, people were quite happy growing the cocoa, growing the copra. I mean, the oil palm story is a success story. There is no two ways about it. Right. There are issues with it, obviously, and things that still need to be addressed. Whereas the coffee, the cocoa, the copra industries have all tended to go backwards.
All right. So basically in 41 years, what you have seen that when you came here, the agricultural sector actually was in a better position than it is today.
Very much so.
Right.
I mean, there's so many issues, you know, it's a very complex argument, but you have population growth, pressures on the land in places where there wasn't pressures on the land in those days, issues of law and order, roads, communications, all those sort of things. But the point is, the agriculture sector has competent people. They have farmers who know what they are doing. They have PNG scientists on the ground who are very good. Some of them can match it with the best in the world. You have businessmen and people like New Britain Oil Palm who are world-class businesses. They're not just here making money for themselves. They are part of a huge organization. The environmental issues surrounding oil palm production, they're some of the best in the world.
So a lot of potential, a lot of competent people, but still a lot to be done.
Yes.
Now, with the idea of looking into the future, I have in studio with me the ambassador of the European Union, and I have Allan Bird, the governor of the East Sepik Province. And I think there is a very exciting project at the moment that is about to take off in Papua New Guinea. And this is why I have invited you in studio today to talk about it, because we want to talk about what can be done to address some of the challenges that you have mentioned. And obviously, we can't fix the problems ourselves sitting in this office today, in this studio today, but we can at least talk about it. Ambassador, the European Union, as far as we know, has committed to invest a significant amount of money. We're talking about 85 million euros. We can't talk about it extensively today, but maybe you can give us a little bit of a flavor, a little bit of an appetizer of what this very exciting new investment in the agricultural sector of Papua New Guinea.
I would say it's the largest ever investment made by the European Union in the entire region, not only Papua New Guinea, in the Pacific region.
The Pacific.
It's an integrated rural development program. It's not only agriculture. Actually, we support 3 value chains in a way, in a holistic way. Try to target all the needs from A to Z, not only production, but also accessibility, training, and marketing.
So it's an holistic approach.
Exactly.
Now, Allan, you're the governor of the province. I'm sure you're very happy that this investment is happening in East Sepik. I think a lot of people might ask, why East Sepik? Why the European Union has decided to start that investment there? From what I understand, that will affect the Momasa region as a whole, and hopefully in the future beyond that, because this is a very diverse country, it's an archipelago with many different realities. But if you're going to speak for yourself and say, well, I think Sepik is a good place to start, why is that?
One of the things we lack in Papua New Guinea is champions. There are very few success stories where you can be able to sort of tap on it and say, okay, here's a success story, let us try and replicate it. Now, in the absence of success stories, what do you do? How do you zero in to pick the one or two things that you do that will help solve a lot of the issues that you have? And I think East Sepik has proven, particularly our vanilla farmers. What most people don't realize is that vanilla was built by ordinary farmers. There's no government policy on vanilla. You've got government policy on cocoa, you've got government policy on coffee, you've got government policy on just about everything. And if you look at the success rates there, very, very poor. And you got to contrast that with vanilla. Vanilla is totally driven by village farmers. Yet they are now the second largest producer in the world. How is that possible when you have such a powerful government that can make all these decisions? In the one area it is not contributing any decision making, boom. You've got amazing, world-class producers who can match it with the best in the world. Now, that's something that Papua New Guinea is never very good at. We're never very good at getting a lesson from something that's successful and replicating. For 40-odd years, Papua New Guinea has been doing things a certain way. We've been spending so much money, whether it's government money or donor money or anybody's money, and the results are in fact telling us that we're going backwards. So perhaps it's time, as Einstein said, change the way you are doing things and you will get different results.
Steve, you're very vocal on the fact that over the years that you've been in Papua New Guinea, you've seen so many projects that were initiated with government funds or perhaps international funds that didn't really go that well. And I know for a fact that you think that that happened because the lack of private partnership or private intake into those projects. Would you say that perhaps this could be the case once again, or would you advise the two partners here that the private sector should play a strong role into this new investment as well?
Yes, I think it's very, very important. I mean, part of the problem with the agriculture sector in general is it's so fragmented. You have a coffee industry, you have a cocoa industry, you have an oil palm industry, you have a spices board, you have a livestock development corporation. And really the old role that the Department of Agriculture used to play overseeing all of this no longer really exists. And I think in a lot of cases, some of those institutions have become, people in them have just become builders of empires. They've built up these public service mentality empires that can't really deal with issues when you have a problem. I mean, Allan's a good example. You know, he wasn't a politician all his life. He's been in the private sector. He's done the hard yards in the vanilla industry. He's done a lot of the hard yards in the cocoa industry too.
Now, although we all live in Papua New Guinea and we might feel that everything we experience in this country is unique, but at the end of the day, the European Union has invested in a number of projects over the years in the agricultural sector, not only in Papua New Guinea, all over the world, including Africa and other developing parts of the world. So, Ambassador, is there any other project similar that the European Union has developed in the past around the agricultural sector that could be an example that could be replicated in PNG when it comes to the new investment?
As you mentioned, we have invested over a number of decades all over the world in agriculture, and actually it was around 20, 30 years ago where agriculture was still in a la mode, I would say. A lot of investment was done in terms of rural development, and a lot of investment was really spent not in a very wise way, I would say. So a lot of lessons have been learned, and I would like to, and indeed, if we are going to embark again in such a sector with such a massive investment, we have to make things right. We don't have an excuse because we have the expertise, we have the lessons. And that's why it took so long to analyze the Papua New Guinea market, the potential, consult with everybody to make sure that we reduce risks.
All right.
That's fundamental. It's not that we prefer Sepik or we prefer vanilla or cocoa. We listen to the industry, we listen to all stakeholders, and then based on the analysis, we concluded together with the government about the areas where there is the biggest possible potential. There is, when we search on results and impact. And then indeed, by creating paradigm, we can really replicate this project and expand the project to other areas. Also, within this project, we start with Sepik, and soon after the first results, we can also continue and expand in the rest of Umaze region. And we are very ambitious if we really reach the success we anticipate to be able to create a paradigm for further investment, not only from the European Union, because we cannot cover the entire country.
Not at all, obviously. Governor, what I would like to understand is how your administration is going to work together with the European Union, because obviously you do know the reality of your province better than anybody else in this room. How are you going to work with the European Union?
The Papua New Guinea organizations, public sector, including my provincial government administration, they don't have the capacity. It's as simple as that. So, quite honestly, a lot of the expertise will have to be procured. The way to do it is, there are public servants who say, oh, we've got to build capacity, we've got to build capacity. Listen, we've been building public sector capacity for 30 years, and we still have no capacity. The way to do it is to run parallel. We can't wait for public servants to get up to speed while, the country is limping along. It's got serious issues. I think a lot of times our public sector people, they make excuses and they want to own a program. As a government, I think you got to decide what do you want to own. I look at it in the sense of a vehicle. We can get a ready-made vehicle and drive it. In this case, you allow the expertise to be procured. So you're getting a ready-made vehicle. Or you can go buy the wheels, you can buy the drivetrain, you can buy the engine, you can buy the seats, and you spend the next 8 months building the car. Okay? My approach is let's not build a car. There's already a car in existence. Let's just grab it, put it on the road, put some fuel in, start the engine, and let's go. Because we wasted enough time trying to build vehicles over the years. And I think it is then incumbent upon the public servants to fire up their own personal ambition to learn and get involved, get your hands dirty, and you learn while you're doing it. Right. That's the best way to build capacity.
Right. Governor, I think this is music to the ears of Steve. I'm pretty sure that he thinks that. And but I want you to hold that thought for a minute, because we're going to go for a short commercial break. And when we'll come back, we're going to talk more about this. Welcome back to the Farming PNG season finale. Governor, you were mentioning something quite interesting. You were saying we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and if we can bring the expertise, I think that's easier, because the other way has failed in the past, so let's try something new. Ambassador, in that sense, I think it's important to understand what's going to be the role of the European Union in that sense, because you don't have the capacity to actually implement those projects. You might have the capacity back in Brussels, but it will be too expensive to bring them all. And normally the way the European Union operates is that you actually have international partners that will deliver the projects on your behalf. And in this case will be the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. It's an entity that you have worked together with in the past many times. But maybe you can explain that sort of synergy that you normally forge.
Let me first clarify that we're talking about a Papua New Guinean program, a national program supported by the European Union. It's a multi-stakeholder program. We have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of actors involved to work together, to coordinate, to reach the results we are going to achieve at the end of the day.
Right.
And this is where things become more complicated and very risky. It is necessary that First of all, that everybody is fully formed and aware of its contribution. And we're talking about contribution by the central government, by the Department of Agriculture, the Cocoa Board. We're talking about transport, Ministry of Works, energy, ICT, also development of small and medium-sized enterprises. We need the support, of course, of the provincial authorities in this endeavor. And we need somebody to coordinate all that. And by examining the potential partners, we came across that the Food and Agriculture Organization is an internationally recognized body that's able to play this coordinating role. But I would like to repeat, it's a coordinating role. It's a role that is going to bring together all the national bodies to work towards a joint endeavor.
Now, I think it's important to understand what is the time frame of this project, which sounds very ambitious, because you will have to involve so many entities, so many, and hopefully also the private sector, as you said, Steve, very, very important. So that kind of things always takes time, and sometimes it gets messy along the way. So what are we talking about? When will this investment actually make itself felt on the ground, to begin with in Greater Sepik, as you said, and then the rest of the country? And how long will it take altogether? Do we have a time frame for that?
Indeed, the whole duration is not going to take more than 5 years. And we have already entered since last month at the beginning of the implementation, which is a critical nitty-gritty design phase. Okay. Now is the phase where we're going to detail all the action to take place, and it's the final design, I would say, whereby we have really to make things right. I expect to have the first works on the ground sometime in mid-2020 to see the first results. So now is the time where all stakeholders have to sit down together, and we also foresee certain workshops and meetings together to make sure who is doing what and when. And this is very, very critical.
Do we have a name for the project, Governor, that we can call in a simple way? Not one of those acronyms that are really difficult to pronounce and nobody actually remembers. Do we have like a catchy name for it that could ring in people's ears?
Well, right now I have to defer to the ambassador, to be honest.
Actually, we have already a name, which is an acronym, but it also can the spelling is not the same. It's not so catchy, I would say, but it's quite straight. It's called straight.
Well, that's a catchy one. Straight.
It's
I like
straight,
that.
indeed.
Well, it has to be straight.
Yes,
okay?
it has to be straight.
But to go straight in Papua New Guinea, it's not easy. And Steve and I know about that because we have traveled this country back and forth filming Farming PNG. And our back, it's not in a good condition anymore because we had to go back and forth, up and down, just to go anywhere. So I would say transport is probably one of the biggest issues we have faced in this country.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of issues there. I mean, marketing is also an issue in Papua New Guinea. Traditionally, we've exported processed cocoa beans, we've exported crude palm oil, we've exported coffee. They go to international, very sophisticated markets. And I think this is something that a lot of Papua New Guineans don't understand. If you go into a supermarket in London, you can go and have a look in the coffee section, and you'll see coffee there from maybe 40, 50 different countries around the world. Colombian coffee, Brazilian coffee, Ecuadorian coffee, coffees out of African countries. So we're up against a very sophisticated marketing situation. And just because you plant the stuff in the ground, that's only the beginning of it. You need to be out there seeing what the world market requires. What's required in Australia may not be the same as what's required in Greece or in England. You know, all these things should be tackled before PNG invests in these massive projects. You're talking about a global economy that's huge. I mean, coffee alone is billions and billions and billions of kina.
So you're saying it's a very competitive market.
It's very competitive.
You need to go up there with a very competitive product. No doubts about that.
And then part of what you're just saying there with the cost of infrastructure here, shipping from here to London, say, for example, or Rotterdam in Europe, is expensive exercise.
Absolutely.
And then you're paying all your wharfage, handling, quarantine charges, and you're up against African countries who can do it a lot cheaper than we can do it.
But the costs and the challenge is not only out there, but the challenge is also in the country. And I think the cost of doing business is one element that always comes about when you talk about industries in PNG. Now, I think, Governor, it will be interesting to talk about downstreaming as well, because I think it's a catchy phrase that we hear a lot of time now in the agricultural sector of Papua New Guinea. This is a country that is well known when it comes to raw material. It could be under the ground when it comes to hydrocarbon, but it's also well known in a way for what it can produce on the ground when it comes to the agricultural sector. Unfortunately, the world is not aware of it because not many products reach those markets, but also don't reach those markets as finished products. But I think some of the effort of the European Union as a development partner is to see more downstreaming, adding value to the production in Papua New Guinea. Perhaps we can talk about that in relation to this straight project that is about to take off.
Absolutely. I mean, let's take the example of cocoa. It ends up being made into cocoa powder. It ends up being made into chocolate and, a variety of other things, cocoa butter, blah, blah, blah. When you're talking about downstreaming, you're not just talking about getting a finished product. You're talking about all of the inputs that go into getting that finished product. And one of the most important things about manufacturing is reliable power supply. If you have a factory in, say, in Europe producing chocolates, they don't have to worry about irregular power supplies affecting their production lines. So they can bring in a bulk product from wherever it is in the world. They can process it. They can remove what they don't want. They can take whatever it is they need, put it into their blend, and they can get a product.
Much more flexible.
Much more flexible. And perhaps for us, we need to get innovative. And when I say innovative, I mean private sector. One of the things we're doing, and I want to respond to what Steve was mentioning earlier. All of the interventions that we are doing in partnership with our good friends in the EU and all of the other players is not about removing the private sector from the equation. It's about creating a base from which private sector can tap in to then access the markets. How do you then produce a quality product that will meet the standards necessary to get it into the market? The other thing is, because you've got a finished product, it's unstable. It needs to be frozen or chilled or whatever else to get to market. So you're having to fight all of this. You're adding more risk to your value chain. So perhaps we need to be thinking in reverse. What does the market want? How do we deliver to the market what it wants, at the quality it wants, and most importantly, at a price that the market will take?
Ambassador, I hope that this is an interesting conversation for you, because probably it's music to your ear in the sense that you know where the European Union has to intervene. It's not only about making the most of the crops or what's available, it's about addressing those practical issues that exist on the ground, and in Papua New Guinea there are plenty of those. So you mentioned at the beginning this to be an holistic approach and to really improve the value chain. So I want to ask you one more time, how much attention you will be putting into this?
Actually, we heavily depend on the empowerment of the beneficiaries. I think this is one of the key success factors, how we can really improve the entrepreneurship skills of the farmers. Have a farmer who is also entrepreneur. And I believe that by developing this kind of mentality, we are going to grow a more demanding beneficiary who would really require more quality, and will ensure also quality of his product, quality of the services and quality of his own products.
Right.
Because to reach the level of downstream processes, we have really to have a stable and consistent supply chain. And this is an extremely important factor for the project. The farmer has to look after the quality of the product, he has to also look after at the production capacity, and he has to reassure the markets that he is able to deliver the program on the product on time in the required quality and quantity. So it's extremely complicated because the markets are extremely demanding. Papua New Guinea, unfortunately, is a price taker. It does not have enough production to determine the world market. It heavily depends on cocoa, on the productivity of Ivory Coast and other markets, and coffee is the production and the weather conditions actually in Brazil. And therefore, to be able to offset these risks, it has to really identify its own competitive advantage and create its own name and branding, so that it can really somehow absorb the shocks and really have more stability in the prices.
And the farmer has to be himself the protagonist of that.
He has to own that. That is fundamental.
Yeah.
Very well, very good, well said. Well, obviously we can talk for hours about this, but unfortunately we don't have the luxury of the time to do that. So I would say that perhaps I would like to have each one of you sort of a final statement about what we have discussed today. I will start with you, Governor, because I'm sure you will be sleeping at night and thinking, you know, where East Sepik or Greater Sepik will be 5 years from now, knowing that I have a development partner that is willing to invest a considerable amount of money, and I can really turn the sector that is close to me, because I do know that the agriculture is very close to your heart, and you have a unique opportunity, probably once in a lifetime, we can say.
Well, I think the most important thing for me is the opportunities it creates. I'm interested in creating a future that is full of opportunities. Because we've never had much of a base, the opportunities have been limited. And I'm not saying opportunities for you know, foreigners who might come in, but opportunities for Papua New Guineans. And I don't mean just Sepiks. Once the economy expands because of what we are doing, there will be opportunities for other players from around the country to be able to come in and tap into and of course help us to grow and expand. I'm taking a little bit of a risk because I am not thinking 5 years, I'm thinking 20. Not many Papua New Guinean members of parliament think in 20 or 30 segments, but I do. And so once we create that base, I think you will get a snowballing effect. Because as you can see from the videos there, we are already empowering our farmers. And as the ambassador said, each individual family unit that is now involved is actually an entrepreneur. Once the farmer becomes successful because of the assistance that is going to be provided and the enabling environment for them to expand, and so they might start, for instance, building better houses. So there'll be a demand on the hardware shops. So you've got that spinning going on in the economy. They might send their kids, because they've got the ability now, they'll send their kids to better schools, so the next generation is better educated. They will then have a demand because they've got money in their pocket. They say, well, I don't have to go to the government hospital. I will pay for private services. So you start to enable a whole new future that was not possible today. It will be possible in 5 years' time. But I think the thing we're lacking is successful examples. And we've never had one. So if you create a successful pilot, which is what we are doing,
it can be replicated.
It can be replicated. There will be a demand for it. Every Papua New Guinean, not only Papua New Guineans, people in Solomon Islands will say, well, why can't we do that? People in Vanuatu will say, well, why can't we do that?
So hopefully this project will affect the region as a whole. But in a nutshell, what you're saying, what you hope that this project will create a number of synergies. Therefore,
absolutely,
the socioeconomic development
will change.
Will change and will at least get into a different gear. Steve, what would you say they should really pay attention to make this a successful story?
I think there's a number of things. I mean, one is there's a growing global demand for niche market. So some of the things like coffee, your cocoa, your vanilla, coconut oil, there's more and more of that going to become available. You know, you're not talking large volumes like we traditionally export, but small niche markets, they're actually worth more money. But I think, so there are some wonderful, exciting opportunities on the horizon for Papua New Guinea. If we can just take that next step scientifically, marketing-wise, move on quickly to catch up and to make things happen in a PNG level. But I think the most critical point is that it should all be for the benefit of the farmer, because the farmer himself, he knows what his land can do, he knows what he needs to do. Once he starts getting money in his pocket and a guaranteed market for his produce, he becomes an entrepreneur himself.
Ambassador, I suppose this has been probably the most successful project that you have overseen. So if you have a wishful thinking, what would you like to see for this project?
First of all, I would say that we are doomed to succeed.
Good. Doomed to succeed is the last. It's perfect.
That's extremely important.
Good.
Because it's a massive investment.
Right.
It's a grant investment. It's investment from European taxpayers for the development of Papua New Guinea, not only for the geographical or sectors that we try to develop now. What I would like also to underline is the spillover effect of the project that we try to achieve, and also the indirect benefits of the project, because when you build a road, to market cocoa or vanilla is not for those, it's also for providing accessibility to the rural population, accessibility to social services, accessibility to financial services. When you electrify for the fermentaries, you also electrify the households. And what I would like to see is to have some results, some outcomes on how many finally beneficiaries were directly or indirectly, so that can also showcase to European investors that this is really worthwhile doing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm an ecologist really deep inside, so my hope is that this project will bring some new technologies also when it comes to power, because I am frankly really tired to talk about generators and diesels and all of that. And the Sepik, like the rest of the countries, got so much sun and water and so on. So it would be great if this project really brings about sustainable sources of energy, which really is the biggest challenge for this country. So I hope that some of that will be part of this project. So I think that brings us really to the end of this discussion. Sadly brings us to the end of Farming PNG Season 2. Steve, I really hope that you and I will be on the ground soon to go and film some other news stories, because we all know that doesn't matter how much we talk about the agricultural sector, we will only scratch the surface, because this is really goes so deep into the fabric of the nation, and it goes so deep into the culture of Papua New Guinea. So with this, we close this discussion here tonight. I would like to thank you all for having come here today, and also I would like to thank the viewers for having following us over 6 episodes, and hopefully we will be back soon with another season of Farming PNG. So thank you very much, and good night to all.